Oh, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Save Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn. Sejohn, why don't you take it away, because I'm talking extremely fast, and people probably don't understand what I'm saying. Hey, yeah.
You've invited an energy to this show that I was not prepared for. Let's put it that way. What's going on, Dev?
Not much. I am rapidly approaching quantum attunement. I'm going to drift with the cosmos.
Oh,
I feel amazing. And
bye,
that is one of the
Dev.
reasons why I wanted to do this, to record this episode tonight. Because when we parted ways, it was 12 hours ago. My time. That was the last time we were on mic together. And, full disclosure, it is 4:49 in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So that means that it was 12 hours ago. So that means that we were hanging out at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I went to sleep, and I had to get up to go to work for 8 o'clock. So that's 3 hours of sleep, conservatively.
Right, yeah.
If I don't do a leave-in conditioner, or if I do a leave-in conditioner. Who knows? So anyway, welcome to the Stay Report. It's a show about everything. I love my energy right now, and I wanted to bottle it. And since I don't know how to juice a human yet, I thought that the best way to bottle it was to record an episode of the Stay Report. And that's what you're getting now. Quantum
We
attunement.
needed to have a birds and the bees talk? Is that what we need to do?
No, because it's a mental juicing, not a physical juicing. This one got away from me. This metaphor got away from me.
Watch it go. Oh, man. So what's up, Dev? What's you seem excited about something?
I'm excited because I'm free from the mistress, the temptress, the goddamn siren that is Bloodstained ritual of the night.
Yeah, man, you have gotten through. We did a big talk on it last week, but then there was a little bit of an update.
Yes.
to the game, huh?
So, full disclosure, because why not? There was a review embargo for people who were given the game by the publisher, which luckily we're not even a blip on the radar of people who might be noticed for such a review embargo. So,
Right.
And I got the game for myself. I didn't get it from the publisher. But everything that I talked about, the reason why that review embargo was there is 505 Games, the studio behind it, said that there was a day one patch that was required to get the full experience. Now, that's very strange to me. I will admit that, because I had played through the game twice on normal and hard difficulty before its official release date of June 18th. But yeah, they released a 5 gigabyte patch, at least on the PlayStation 4 version, that finished the game.
Your quotes around that.
Yeah, I tried to say it with my voice. I tried to do the I'm Ron Burgundy. Finished the game? Who the hell put a question mark on my teleprompter? Yeah, so and in finishing the game, it gave enemies that I was already able to fight drops that they did not have before.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the drops that were keeping me from getting items that I could not yet acquire. And so that was weird that happened. And it also gave to people entries in like the bestiary for characters, but they're characters that I already fought and had defeated. So I was like, when I logged in last night to play through Nightmare Mode, which you could not play through before this patch either, despite the fact that the physical release is like, now you should play it in Nightmare Mode. But as soon as you did it, it crashed. It crashed horrendously. So I went through Nightmare Mode thinking that maybe these items were locked behind the harder difficulty, because games have done that before. Lollipop Chainsaw is unfortunately the first game that jumps to mind for that, where you're unable to collect all of the lollipop flavors unless you're playing on hard mode.
Right, yeah, they don't show up until you play into the harder modes. Yeah.
So I fully believed that, like, maybe an enemy's drops change on a higher difficulty, or perhaps since I had three enemies that had yet to show up, Demons 122, 125, and 128, that perhaps they held these items that I could not find.
Right.
So last night, once the patch was available, I downloaded it. Sejohn was there playing through Borderlands 2 on headset with me, being my reluctant co-pilot. I appreciate it, buddy. It was really, really great to have you there. I played through the game and discovered the changes that had been made. And one of the reasons that we're talking about it, trust me, it's not going to be as long as the discussion that we gave last week, but it has given both of us, I think, I don't want to put words in Sejohn's mouth, a different perspective on games journalism, especially regarding reviews.
Yeah, it's weird because like, I've always known that there's been this idea of review copies and obviously day one patches and things changing, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about how patching and nerfing games and all that sort of stuff and how we feel about that. It was really interesting because I don't know how much firsthand experience either of us had really ever had with that sort of thing before. And so like experiencing it firsthand, I don't know if it necessarily like awakened any realizations in me so much as if it just nailed home some thoughts I already had. Very often I've listened to reviewers and journalists of the and all sorts of levels of critics, whatever they want to call themselves. Like talk about these things and often feel like a weird disconnect sometimes with what they're doing, what they're seeing, and I feel that way with movies and TV too. It's not just video games, but there's always been this weird aspect with video games in particular that like, well, the experience could be so different from player to player. And I think what this drove home is I just didn't, I, even in my skepticism, I didn't realize how different they could truly be.
Right. I mean, my perspective shift is just the fact that it went from conspiracy theory to flat out
Reality.
like, proven. Like
Yeah.
it's a proof now,
Right.
based on my experience just with this game. Like I have been answering questions. I jumped back into Game FAQs. I'm Fox Zero on there. And I've just been answering questions because I put the time in to learn the answers to those questions. But then a lot of it, I find myself having to say, of course, this is based on the version 1.0 version of the game, so take that with a grain of salt. But now that I've played through Nightmare on the 1.02 version, I have answers about that as well. But I still need to play through on normal mode to feel like I actually understand what people are coming up against, if that makes any sense.
For sure, because you don't know what kind of weird stuff you were experiencing because it was Nightmare versus because you were in the new patch.
Right, exactly. And I mean, a specific one is you're locked to level 1 for Nightmare mode. You don't gain levels. So you have X amount of health, X amount of MP. So it plays more like a regular video game without the upgrading, which is cool. It's nice to think that in modern times, like NES hard is considered a nightmare, I guess.
Yeah, man. Hey, it was a nightmare then too.
Right, exactly. And I was thinking about like, well, that's a huge difference between the game that I had been playing and the game that Nightmare mode is. But that specifically felt like something tied to the mode, not to the patch.
Right.
But along the same way, I mean, prices had gone up and item attack power had changed. And the real issue that I have with it, because I know that I, kind of skirted in the gray area with Bloodstained, the game was available for, I'm going to say 12 hours before that patch was made available to people playing on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I was actually literally just listening to the guys from Gears, the Gears franchise there, talking about how it used to be back in the day when Gears 1 came out that like people were getting the game at midnight, and it was midnight in Eastern Standard, then midnight in Mountain, then and so in terms of keeping an eye on the online community, in terms of keeping an eye on servers, in terms of all that shit, like they didn't have to be ready for 20 million people at once. But now here we are in the digital age and the pre-download age, and so people are instantly getting into these games. And so like this idea, and specifically thinking about the idea of the patch coming out later in the day, like it's interesting that if they waited 12 hours and they weren't ready to drop it immediately, considering the way that we sell and consume games now.
Yes, but my bigger issue is on the scheme is everybody who got that game as soon as it was available and played for those 12 hours had the same experience that I had. Mm-hmm. And they did not, dance in gray. They did what the game was supposed to do. And then because that patch rolled out, they're finding a lot of these things where the gameplay that you had put in those save files are not compatible. So you have to start from the beginning again once you get that patch.
Oof.
And that bothers the hell out of me.
Well, yeah, because that just seems like broken mechanic right there. Like, if you bought the game digitally, had it pre-downloaded, and you pressed play at midnight, and you played for 10 hours, and then you realized you lost that 10 hours of progress because you came back the next day and it was not like, fuck that. That's upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not the first time that I've experienced that. That happened when Cuphead went from its first version to its upgraded version. All of my save files just disappeared. Yeah. And I don't know if that was on my end or on the game's end, but in a weird way it felt like it was on the game's end because of like, no, you don't get to keep your progress before we made these necessary changes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, who are you to decide what is valid and what is not valid in a game that I purchased? Which then goes into the whole question of, I'm only licensing this game, I don't own that game.
Oh yeah,
but then it becomes
the question of authority in the gaming experience is a deep and dark recess that we could definitely dive down if you want.
No, I really don't. But it's shown a light on a lot of these things. And then I had some person that I was talking with today say, I don't have Demons 122 or 125. How do I get them? And I'm like, it's these two characters that you need to beat. I'll say it, whatever, slight spoilers. True Zangetsu and Dominique. And he's like, I beat them and they haven't popped. I'm like, did you beat it before you downloaded the patch? He's like, yeah, I was able to get through the game. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to need to beat them again post-patch.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but that's why they didn't. And I'm like, but I mean, I did it. I got through Nightmare Mode in New Game Plus in 4 hours last night. You could probably get through normal mode if you're like hard up to get those two demons. Yeah, but it's not right that you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the bigger story there is.
Yeah, and like game breaking patches is not new. That happens all the time. It's just it's disheartening when it happens. And to be fair, it was happening kind of in real time for you. Like as I was online with you last night, listening to you discover each one of these things that had been like fucked with, messed with, or changed, and how it had messed with your progress, how it had messed with it's a disheartening experience when that sort of stuff comes through, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much closing the book. Still a game that I enjoyed playing, and I'm going to go back and play through the version 1.02 before 1.03 comes and just ruins everything again. I kid, kinda. But but it is. It's still a game that I recommend. I stand by everything that I said, especially since a lot of the stuff that I really discovered that was game breaking, I discovered after we recorded that episode, and a lot of those game breaking things were the things that were patched out. And I say game breaking in a good way, in the way that like speedrunners break games in order to make progress. I don't mean it in the negative way. That's why I've never liked. I look forward to watching this game get broken in terms of speedrunning, because it's not one of those words that has universal meaning, like bad meaning good.
Yeah. Well, and there's an implication behind the language, right? Like it's a failing in our language to say broken when what you're doing is you're utilizing the mechanics that are available in the game in a way that maybe they weren't intended. But does that mean that they're quote unquote broke? Like, I don't know. Like that's weird, and it does then lead developers to feel the need to then fix. But like you're saying, what if you don't want it quote unquote fixed, right?
Yes, precisely, Sejohn. There's the real heart of it. But enough about video games, unless you have more to say on video games. I think there's something that you want to discuss.
Yeah, man. Man, I'm in such a weird place still about it. I don't know how to talk about this, but it's happening. The banana splits are coming back, guys, and in a fun and new, exciting way that we couldn't expect, we couldn't be prepared for. We're getting a full-length movie I can't do this, Dev. I don't know what to do. Like, this is so weird.
I'm just waiting for you to end the sentence so I can put a big old asterisk at the end.
Yeah, here you go. Here's your asterisk. Go for it.
The everything Sejohn just said is a lie, but like in marketing speak, double speak, fun, new, exciting way. I will be honest with you. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of backstory based on what Sejohn said. The Banana Splits Adventures was a show that we watched as kids, and it was about like large anthropomorphic mascot-esque characters having adventures and being best friends.
And it was a group of characters. What were they? Fleegle, Doozer.
Uh, uh, I don't remember all their names.
Yeah, I've been staring at them for the last 2 days, but my mind is just a jumble right now because of everything
Fleagle's
going
the
on.
only one that I remember because he's sort of the de facto leader. Bongo is the monkey.
There you go. So there are these characters that were a hybrid creation of Hanna-Barbera and Sid and Marty Krofft, if that gives you some idea. In 1960, I believe 68 and 69 were the only 2 years that they were really on the air. But they were these characters that were created to host a cartoon show. Like they used to do back in the day. The Captain Kangaroo style. Let's do these interspersed segments, and then we'll throw our cartoons on in between. And that's really the bread and butter is the cartoons, and that's what ends up surviving to today, right? That's what. And so when you say that we watched them as when we were kids, clearly not in the 60s when they first came out, but they had a little bit of a resurgence in the early 90s when Boomerang first started it up, because it was one of the first shows that Boomerang really got latched onto. Because again, the style of show was just too good. Like it was built for mass consumption of children who weren't only paying half attention, right? Like, so the idea is that these characters were beloved, and like I remember them and enjoy them, and if I found like plushies or some shit of them, like I think there's Funko Pops of them, right? That's a good way of gauging their cultural significance. They at least merit a Funko Pop series.
I mean, there's the fact that I knew that Fleagle's name was Fleegle. Like, I saw this trailer that we're about to discuss, and I'm like, oh, I remember Fleegle. Oh, Fleegle, what happened to you, buddy?
And this is also in the context of me having rewatched Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, a whole bunch of other live-action Hanna-Barbera nonsense this week. That and reminiscing about how much I enjoy that stuff. Man, that Steven Spielberg Flintstones movie is super good. Like you forget like
It
the
is
practical work in it
super
is.
good.
Yeah, like it's amazing the way that they bring the world of the Flintstones to life in that movie, in a way that I don't know if you could even do that now, because it'd be half CGI, and let me put my grumpy old man hat on, but like there's something about watching it be that the physical puppetry stuff that they did in that movie that I think really kind of hits all the right notes for me. Like if it were done now and it was all like half CGI and or animated or whatever they chose to do, I don't know if it would necessarily work for me in the way that, like, there's the stupid moment at the end of that movie when they're all walking around with the parrot puppet in their hands and they have to keep handing it off, and you could tell that like not Kyle Chandler. What's his
Kyle
name?
MacLachlan.
Kyle MacLachlan ends up with it in his arm at one point, and you could practically see him putting his hand inside the puppet to work the mouth of it. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and what's more amazing is that all of those people were trained to do that puppetry stuff because it was the only way to do that scene.
Well, right, yeah, yeah.
Like they don't do that for movies anymore. I mean, probably also because of unions. Like, there's probably a puppetry union that, like, you can't use just regular actors to do this. You got to use Puppetry Union 102.
All right, and now what they would do is they would put a guy in a green suit and have him work the puppet and do the voice, and then they would just edit him out in post, right? Like,
Right.
that's...
God, that movie is also a really good story. The fault of the Flintstones film is 100% they're like, oh, we can make $1 million extra every minute of this movie is product placement.
Yeah,
and as
well,
we learned from Return of the Killer Tomatoes, that's fine if it's in the background, but when it's front and center, you gonna notice.
Yeah, there's definitely, for sure, there's definitely some faults with that movie, but what's interesting is that in terms of what the Flintstones were, that movie, even with its faults, fits perfectly into what the Flintstones always were. So it still works, right?
Yeah, it's
And
still
it's
a
funny that
guy
you
trying to
mentioned,
take care of his family.
right, and it's funny that you mentioned like the story of that movie because it's interesting to me that the comics that have been going on in the last few years that with Hanna-Barbera, where they've been doing their kind of resurgence in the comic world by doing these really like what was the word I used? Like experimental versions of these stories now. So they've taken the Flintstones, for instance, and they've done this really big story about the idea of Fred leading the unionization of his job, which is funny enough, kind of a huge part of that movie is the idea that he kind of gets put as the representative of the workers into this job position, and he's put in this leadership role, and then of course gets like caught up in the business scandal of all of it, and like it's not beat for beat the same story at all, but it is very much hitting the same themes. So there is something about the idea of Fred Flintstone, regular dude, sitcom dad, like in this very regular dude story, right? Every man's story of the worker and what happens when he's given even an ounce of power. And so like it all fits, it all works, it's all great. Fast forward.
Pebbles needs braces.
Well, like the whole adoption story of
Dental
Bam Bam
plan.
and
Sorry.
about how like he becomes like a whole like it becomes a whole story for Betty and Barney and the idea of them finally being able to adopt a child, and part of it is um that whole aspect of the family man aspect of the everyman story, right? Like it is great. Go back and watch the Flintstones movie.
Dude, just
Don't
for the people who are in it, just for the cast.
Yeah.
Oh my, Rick Moranis nails Barney Rubble.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
we have crowed about John Goodman enough times, but Halle Berry as Miss Stone.
Yep, Halle Berry is the as in the weird like henchman role, which is was really interesting.
I believe Ingenue would be the title for her character.
She's not really the sexy, is she? I don't know.
She kind of is. She's like the sex pot. That I don't know. It's weird. She is there to like, God, Kyle MacLachlan's character. I can't think of his character's name, but like Clint Flintrock. It's such a stupid name.
Yeah,
but
it's something like that.
His plan is so good. Like I want villains to have good plans again. That's why I liked Thanos, is because he had clearly put some thought into his plan. Granted, there are other things that he could have done for his plan, but his whole, if I wipe out half the people, everything doubles. You can also just double everything. No.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's my favorite part of the ending of Austin Powers is when Doctor Evil is finally when number two comes out and Doctor Evil is just like, "Help me, number two," and number two is finally like, "No, you're the worst one-dimensional villain of all time. You know what we do now? We run businesses and we run them into the ground, and that's how we make our money. We don't bother with this fucking world domination bullshit. We run the world just in our own way."
There is a Starbucks on every corner feeding money into this organization, and you waste it on volcano layers.
It's so good. It's like this beautiful like realization of what villainy really is now. And you're right. When the villain has a good plan, it always makes for a better story, right?
Yes, it does, and that's important. And I feel like we have gone down a road because we don't want to talk about the Banana Splits movie. And that is because, and it's interesting in light of last week's episode where Sejohn talked about Five Nights at Freddy.
Yeah.
This is 100% a Five Nights at Freddy script that was passed on, and then Hanna-Barbera's like, oh, we could buy that, and then we could make, Freddy Bear. I don't know any of the characters. Foxy. Haha.
Freddy, Foxy, there you go. There you go.
We can make them the Banana Splits.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, who are the Banana Splits? And it's like, exactly, but we own them.
Yeah. It's this thing that we have the rights for, and the costumes are still back in the lot, so let's do this thing. So, details. We haven't even discussed what the plot is yet, but I think that we need to point out where this is coming from first. So, did you mention Warner Brothers?
I did mention Warner Brothers. Yeah.
So Warner Brothers, So Warner Brothers did have a hand in making this, but they have it has passed through the various pipe works and come out in the toilet that is sci-fi.
Well, I don't
And
know
so
if it's sci-fi. That's the thing. It's Sci-Fi Wire who announced it. I
right.
don't think it's a sci-fi movie.
Well, I think what it is what they're gonna have first rights to show it on TV. Like I
Okay,
think
yeah.
it's gonna be part of their like late night thing, but I do believe it's gonna come out as a Warner Brothers release on disc probably. But I think that their whole thing is that just like they did with some of the later like Chucky movies, and I
Deep
think
Blue Sea 2 is what I was going to
they
reference
yeah,
because I
like
was
they do
playing
this.
Bloodstained into the morning, and at 2 in the morning I'm like, Deep Blue Sea 2 exists. I didn't
Yeah,
watch it, but I
but this is
wanted
what they
to.
do is these B horror movies get made out there, and sci-fi buys in on them to help them get made, and they get the option of putting them on TV first. And so, lo and behold, this is what they've decided to do is they've decided to buy into this Five Nights at Freddy's craze with the banana splits. I I I don't know. I don't know the words to explain what is happening. I don't know the words to explain how I feel. The entire thing has me in this weird space as like as a show where we have just bathed in nostalgia every episode, right? Like it's definitely something that I am feeling right now with this idea that the like it's being called into question. Like, is my nostalgia, whatever amount of it I'm allowed to even have for the banana splits, is that what is making me feel so weird about this idea of a banana splits horror movie done in the style of a Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Like, on the one hand, if you remove the banana splits aspect from it, right?
Hmm.
The story and the movie look perfectly serviceable. Story, little kid who's super into this kid's show. Parents decide to buy him tickets for the live performance of it. You know, it'd be like going to see like Sesame Street on Ice or some shit. But then when they
Actually, I
get there,
think it would be like going to see the Krusty the Clown show. It feels like it's a show that's taped live
oh, okay,
every
or like going to
day.
see
It
Bozo or
doesn't feel
something like
like
that.
it's not going to like it's not going to a Sesame Street live sort of event like a touring group. This is not the real thing. It
Yeah.
appears as if they got him taping to the Oprah style show that is Banana Splits,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is
So, but
honestly the thing that appeals to me the most because that is what I miss about kid shows. I miss that type of kid show.
yeah. And then, of course, they show up to for the taping of Bozo the Clown, and everything has gone to hell. They get there, and things go awry. Turns out that the banana splits are a bunch of murderous robots now. That's so there. So here's one thing that starts to really kind of get like feel weird for me. Why are they robots? Have they always been robots? Is that going to be the story here? That it's actually been machines the whole time? And that's an odd twist to them that I don't know if I love. I mean, half the joy of the banana splits for me is when the costume clearly starts to like fall away and you can see like human arms and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, because a lot of the Banana Splits, like, they start at the forearm
hmm
so that they have more mobility.
right. Yeah, it's I don't know, man. So killer robot banana splits and they end up of course killing a bunch of people. It's been pointed out that it looks like all they kill is really the parents. So like this is very much going to be one of those parents are stupid type situations, which of course again, very nostalgic. I love that era of filmmaking, that idea that you can have like a horror movie where the kids survive and are and that's very late 80s for me and I love that. But oddly enough, not necessarily what I would consider to be nostalgic for the same era as the Banana Splits. So it's like they're pulling from these all these different disparate things that I do like, but they're putting them together into a sandwich that I don't want to eat.
Okay, so the thing that I picked up from the trailer, first of all, I'm going to watch this movie. There's no doubt in my mind, since you brought it to my attention, that I'm not going to give this my time.
Yeah,
I'm not going to give it my money. I'm not going to buy it. And
it'll
we'll
be.
get to why in a second.
I mean, it'll be available
A
probably.
Redbox. It'll be
Like,
in Redbox in a
well,
second.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I was thinking on demand, but like free, did
Yeah,
video on demand.
exactly. No, I'm thinking that the day that it comes out, I'll go over to Redbox and I'll use a code to get it for 75 cents and I'll watch it and that will feel good because I didn't spend $30. But that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the reason why I want to watch this movie is because it makes it very clear in the trailer that the show has been canceled. So in a lot of ways, these robots are kind of like just disgruntled workers who got fired and have decided, well, then fuck it.
Yeah. So yes, so we learn really early on they show up to this taping, and I don't know if the cancellation, because it's so final. It's the greatest like you're fired Trumpian moment ever, where he's just like, I'm canceling the show, and then it zooms in on like a Fleegle in the background, like what is going on? And so I think the idea is that they are canceled, and the show is like fucking Swamp Thing style. This isn't even happening tonight. Like you are just fucking done. And so I think that there's a little bit more of a turn there, because like, not that it forgives going on a murderous rampage, but I think it's different than like, hey, this is going to be the last season, we're finally closing up. I feel like there's a slower burn to that type of thing, whereas this feels like it's very much in like this all happens in a matter of hours in one night. Like they go on a fucking like instant rampage.
Right. And that is important to me, because if the Banana Splits had been the stars of the show that can become so popular that this like 6-year-old kid wants to spend his birthday going to see a taping of it, I don't want to believe that these characters have been murdering people all along, but it's so popular that we got to keep it under wraps. Like I want to believe that they're like, in a strange way, angels of mercy who are only dealing out vigilante justice to those who deserve it.
Right. That's the other weird part for me, is that like I don't mind the idea of a creepy like murderous like doll story or a murderous toy story, or anything in that realm of like this thing that was meant for kids but now it's coming out for you. And so it's hard for me to think about this right now and not think about comparing it to Candle Cove, season 1 there of the other sci-fi horror show that I fell in love with and I gushed about on the show. But the Candle Cove story that they did for season 1 of why is that? It's gonna fucking get away from me. I can remember Dream Door. I can I can remember all of the fucking subtitles.
Channel Zero.
Channel Zero. Thank you.
I don't know how I knew that. No.
Yeah. But so with that, it's very much in that vein of like there's something going on the whole time, but you feel like the people then involved are all hiding something, and so like there's this weird aspect of not feeling like the people getting hurt deserve it necessarily, but there's a sense to it.
It's morality.
It's not senseless.
It's that like it's
right,
those slasher films. It's why like the rules are be virginal, don't do illegal drugs, don't do illegal activities, because this killer is in a weird way punishing people for destructive choices.
And for me as a viewer, I can go back and watch Jason Voorhees murder a bunch of like stupid teens like a billion times because they always quote unquote deserve it. And this is like a really dark conversation, but yeah, here it is. Whereas on the other hand, something a la like a Funny Games or like The Strangers or even The Purge, the first one in a lot of ways, there's this idea that like this is happening to innocent good people. Like, isn't that creepy and worse? And like, yes, of course it is. I don't want to watch that. So like, I have a really hard time with that style of, again, it's senseless violence that really kind of it rubs me the wrong way. And there's a lot of weird stuff in this preview that I want to believe, like you're saying, that there is this little aspect of it of like it's a revenge story. They get canceled and they go after the people that canceled them. But then that's not what they show, because they're going after all of these like adults and family members and like the people that wanted to be there as ostensibly fans to watch them do this, even if they were just there because really their kid was a fan. At the end of the day, they're not the reason they got canceled. They're in fact quite the opposite.
Right.
So like, yeah.
But
so
I think the other aspect of it is because we see the 6-year-old going off with the elephant whose name I cannot remember. I see all the letters that are in it, but I don't know how to put them together into his name.
Doozle. Nope, I don't remember. We're gonna keep going.
It starts with an S. That's I know that S is at the beginning. This is the worst jumble ever. He is like holding the hand and being kind to the little boy whose birthday it is. Mm-hmm. So there's that little part of me that like maybe there's something negative going on with his parents, or maybe they're murdering the parents because they need the love and adoration of these children in order to maintain their life. Sort of like weird Toy Story vibes where a toy dies if it's unloved. Like that aspect of Toy Story.
Snorky.
Snorky. Thank you. That was the problem. I had a P in there. The K was a P because I'm like, is it Snorpy? No, it's Snorky. Like he is very clearly going out with Snorky. Like,
Yeah, but then there's this weird part of me that thinks that they're doing a little, and this kind of goes to what you're saying, killing the parents to keep the kids, like very Pied Piperish vibe of like stealing the children, right? Which is a little,
which is
it's
not Angel of Mercy.
no, right. So there's just this whole weird aspect because it essentially is saying everything you ever felt and knew about these characters is going to be different in this. So this isn't for you if that's what you wanted out of this movie. And okay, that's fine. But then if it's not for me, my question just continuously comes back to who is this for? Because
I'm sorry to cut you off. You have a description of it, but very clearly I come back to my answer to your question of who is this for. It is for the people who are asking who is this for. Because Sejohn, we both just admitted we're going to watch this movie that has been like throwing you and making you uncomfortable for the last 3 days and me the last 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like I am committed to watching this movie because the just radical shift in tone and topic for the banana splits has me going, who is this for? Are you just hoping that like people who love horror movies are going to watch it? Are you hoping that like the odd Five Nights at Freddy's person is going to think that this is a weird ripoff? Like, I need to know the answer to the question you keep positing. And unfortunately, the only way to get that answer is to give this my time. We are the target audience because we seek the target audience.
Yeah, and I think at this point, after like sitting on this for like after sitting on this for like a day of trying to figure this like my feelings out about this and why I've come to the realization that it's not that I'm trying to figure out my feelings about the movie. I think it is something that I'm interested in. It is something that is weird. It is somebody trying. It is a group of people trying something utterly bizarre, clearly with no real goal in mind, at least not one that they've made obvious in any fashion to me yet. I mean, maybe this movie, maybe we'll watch it and it'll unlock the mysteries of the universe of what art truly is or some shit, but I don't think so. Let's put it that way. So like and I applaud that, everything about that. Like you're saying, like I'm definitely now going to watch this because they've gotten me. I think what I've come to is the realization that I don't know, I'm more concerned about the feelings in myself, the feelings that I am having when I first saw this preview, when I first read the headline and thought, oh, this must be an April Fool's joke. This cannot be real. No, why would they do this? This seems like my initial reaction. I think maybe what I'm feeling is a little bit of, I don't know, guilt in my initial reaction of like, they're doing this because they can, and like that's totally a legitimate reason for anybody to do anything as far as I'm concerned.
That's why that guy climbed Everest.
Well, like, and there's this weird part of me that's like, I would never do something just because I can. I would always have a reason, but I've never been the kind of person to want to impose my artistic beliefs and what art should be on anybody. It's part of the reason that we talk so much on this show about how no matter how much we may bash a movie or shit on a TV show or a video game, we still respect the hell out of the person out there that can finish it, that can love it, that can find something in it, right? Like you can be out there, you can be a fan of Ghost in the Shell for all the fuck I care. Like you've earned that right as a human being, right? And I've got my weird feelings about it, but if you tell me I really like that movie, I'm not gonna like. I'll still buy you a drink sometime. Like it's okay. Like it's okay if you like that movie. And so I'm mad at myself for my initial reaction to when this movie was presented to me, and I was just like, this seems fucking stupid. And then I caught myself and I was like, well, yeah, but who cares? Or like, but that's the point. Like yeah. So it's very, very bizarre and has made me really kind of this movie has made me question myself in a way that I don't think they ever intended, but there you go. Maybe that is the art in this movie.
Yeah, that you're questioning your own belief and desire. And I have two ways that I can go, but I'm going to bury the one that I'm more proud of because I don't want to end on it. and that is I was hanging out with some people last weekend, and we were talking about weird movies, right? Because we had just seen the Shaft sequel, reboot, remake.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a term for that, and it got me thinking about a treatment that I wrote up for a film, and I wrote up 2 of these treatments, and it's weirdly related to what we're discussing right now, and that's the only reason that I cite it today on this episode. And that is, when Battleship came out, a bunch of people started making jokes about what's the next board game that they're going to make into a movie. This is a real thing that happened. And I, for shits and giggles, wrote up a treatment for a Hungry Hungry Hippos film. And Sejohn, I did not just write up 1 treatment, I wrote up 2. Because on the one hand, there are people who want a movie like Battleship, where the aliens are the ones dropping the little pegs and getting hits and misses. And on the other hand, there are probably children who, want to see the game they love turned into characters that they can root for and have origins. So I'm going to give you the option now. Do you want to hear the G-rated or the R-rated treatment? I will give you the other one afterwards, but you get to pick which adventure we go down first.
I mean, if the R-rated one is not just Kong Skull Island, then I don't know what it is, so give it to me.
Okay, so the hippo is the world's perfect hunter and murderer. It's like bite like, is super powerful.
This is not in the movie. This is just factual. That's
just the facts about hippos.
This is just the facts about hippos.
So, in a Midwestern town, the United States government, in a joint effort with the Navy, have begun genetically engineering hippos that they can use as weapons. Unfortunately, the genetically engineered hippos escape, and they have bloodlust and insatiable hunger, and this unsuspecting Midwestern town must deal and fight against these hungry hippos.
Okay, all right.
There's also an aspect. I wrote a scene that I don't think that I would keep going in 2019, where if you're just bitten by the hippo, you slowly become a hippo person.
It's a little rhinoceros for me, but I got you.
But I mean, rhinoceros is just happening. But so you have the creator, the lady scientist who was in charge of the project, and she's like, I can't kill them. I love them, and she lets one of them bite her so that she can become a hippo woman and be with them.
Of course.
And I'm like, that's a little crazy 2019, but I get where it was coming from when I wrote it back during the Battleship days.
So it's a little bit like Crawl meets AVP, huh?
Yeah, it's just because that's one of the ways that I'm like, that's how they would do one of these ridiculous Battleship-esque adaptations of the board game Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Yeah.
Is they would make them insatiable killing machines.
So where's the G-rated Illumination version?
The G-rated Illumination version of Hungry Hungry Hippos is about a group of hippos who live in a town, and they are lazy, and they're eating people out of house and home. So the wizard who lives in the town curses them with insatiable appetites, and then the town ejects them out into the world, saying, you've been cursed by the wizard for your laziness. If you stay here, the town will be destroyed. Get the hell out, hippos. They don't say get the hell out. They say, you need to go, hippos. So the 4 hippos, all in their colors from the board game, go on a journey across the world to try to find their place in it. Meanwhile, located at the bottom of a snowy mountain, there is a village, and this village knows that once a year there will be a great avalanche and snowballs will come down and destroy the village. Eventually, the Hungry Hungry Hippos gang gets to this village and realizes they can eat the snowballs because of their insatiable hunger. Those are the marbles, Sejohn.
Oh man.
And they can eat the snowballs and protect this village. So the village accepts them as their protectors and says that they can stay in the village as long as they agree once a year to eat up all of the snowballs so that the town does not have to be rebuilt once a year.
Have
Like
one
it's
of
one
them
of those
voiced by
things.
Bruce Willis, and you have my money.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole fact of it is the matter is that that town, like they completely understand that once a year we're gonna get destroyed, and once a year, and then we spend the rest of the year building it up, and just as soon as we finish, they come back falling down. Like it's just one of those like, you know, you need to change your station, and like just because you have something negative, it can be turned into a positive. It's like real kids movie. It's like a thing where we could probably write it.
So who would the four hippos be? So one of them has to be Bruce Willis. One of them is John Cena. One of them is Charlie Day.
And
Who's
the
the
other one's
last?
like, I guess Anna
Chris
Kendrick.
Rock?
No, because
Or
one of them's a lady. Because
oh
there's the
yeah.
pink hippo. So
Okay.
like, and you also want to appeal, like mass appeal to the kids.
Yeah,
You
you're
actually
right.
might want to do, you might want to do a 2-and-2 situation and have like the yellow hippo also be a lady, or like even one of the darker colors, because the Hungry Hungry Hippo colors are pink, yellow, orange, and green. Why do I know that? So you just have it in that thing, but like you have like a gruffer, tougher lady. So you'd have like a Leslie Jones playing one of
Leslie
them.
Jones. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Chris Rock, I guess, would play like the bird that like rides on their back the whole movie and is like their friend, but
Yeah,
is one of the
and
hippos.
making all the jokes. I mean, you could
Right.
also have Chris Rock as like the wizard, who like he curses them with the thing, but then his plan was to come back to that village and like once they learn their lesson, take the curse away. So he's
Yeah.
like kind of hunting them down, and they think that he's a villain trying to like stop them, like because of this. But really, he just like, oh, they've learned their lesson. I want to take them back. He didn't realize that the village would treat them so poorly because of their affliction. So he's like trying to make up for it. You could
So
have a lot of
I think
layers
the
to it.
wizard. I think the wizard would be somebody more like J.K. Simmons or Peter Dinklage, somebody in that
Yeah, that'd be
wheelhouse.
fine too. If it's Peter Dinklage, does he come from the moon? But
Oh,
but
man.
so I gave both of those treatments to the people I was hanging out with on Sunday, and invariably the group agreed that the one we just described, the lighthearted kids version story, is the better Hungry Hungry Hippos movie.
If
And
one was gonna have the it was if one was gonna build an actual fan base, you mean?
yes,
Yeah.
the other one is the kind of thing you might see on Sci-Fi or straight to DVD.
Hmm.
And it's just so interesting looking at the banana splits thing. And I'm like, all I can think of, like, I just told my stupid Hungry Hungry Hippo treatments to a group of people. And then I see this and I'm like, they went the path of the R-rated horror film.
Hmm.
And look at how it's affecting just Sejohn. Like, we don't
Yeah.
have a big group of people, but it's affecting you in the way that, like, people were affected when they're like, how is this a Battleship movie? How is this
Yeah.
Battleship the movie? There's
Yeah.
aliens. Oh, I guess because of the drops. Call it something else.
Yeah, but my exact feeling is now look at how we look back on that, right? Like there's it's if it's remembered, it's not remembered fondly. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like
I
the
certainly
splits
feel
deserve better than that.
I certainly feel like the Banana Splits movie has more potential to be enjoyable than the Battleship movie
That's
in
true.
terms of gritty adaptation that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and so that's part of it for me is that like is this just like a spoof on the idea of the gritty? Like, is there somebody that was writing this and was just thinking, "Oh, this is hilarious! Like, I am so smart the way that I'm calling taking a task the gritty reboot, the idea of the gritty reboot. Like I feel like almost like somebody in Warner Brothers had two scripts. They had a Five Nights at Freddy's script, and then they had this one that was like a script that they had jokingly written. And then when Warner Brothers came to them and was like, "Yeah, we're not doing the Five Nights at Freddy's one. What else have you got?" And they were like, "Oh shit. Well, there's this one." And they were just like, "Oh, perfect. We can use all of the stuff we were working on already for this, for that." And they were just like, "I didn't intend for this one to be made."
Right. Like, yeah, because, I mean, honestly, at the time when I came up with those two, the G-rated one, which has become insanely more marketable in terms of a Hungry Hungry Hippos movie,
Uh-huh.
was sort of like my let off steam and let off all these ideas that I didn't think would work for the crazy horror hippo movie.
Right.
Because the people I was hanging out with at the time were like way into horror. So that's why I worked that out, and I'm like, it'll be fun, it'll be whatever. But I'm having all these other great ideas of how you can make a Hungry Hungry Hippos movie,
Oh man.
and I got to
And,
put
you know,
them down. So
and
like, that's the thing.
yeah, I know, and
It's
there will be an audience for this, and
it's
it'll do its
us.
thing,
I hate that it's us, but it's us.
yeah, and so like there it is, right? And I think that I guess where I keep getting stuck and will probably forever get stuck is that looking at all the other stuff that Hanna-Barbera has been doing with their stuff lately, everything from selling them off to certain places in order for them to be remade, Cartoon Network's uh, been trying to get a Wacky Racers franchise of some kind, whether it's a new show or a movie, off the ground for like years. The comics have been doing a really, really good job, as I was saying earlier, of taking these characters and doing really interesting experimental stories with them, with these characters, and that stuff has all really worked well, and that's why part of me is also kind of also wondering if this is gonna work in a weird way. Like, are we gonna see a sequel to this movie in a year or two? Is this gonna become the next Sharknado? Like,
I would love it if it did, but what I would like to point out is I'm not going to give it my money. I will watch it on Sci-Fi. I'll watch it on Netflix. I'll the most I'll spend is the $1.50 at Redbox to see this movie,
yeah,
and that is because it's only because of the Scooby-Doo and the Curse of the 13th Ghost, because I learned my lesson.
yeah.
I learned my lesson from, like, here's a movie that's promising a different look at a thing you liked when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, sign me up. I freaking love the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. And even watching it as an adult, I'm like, this is where a lot of my friggin' humor came from, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if I'm comfortable with, like, oh, meta humor came from watching the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo as, like, a 2-year-old. That blows my mind. I'm not going to lie to you. But then I watched that movie and it's like, really, you took this idea that I cared about when I was a kid and just like, nothing matters, flush, flush, flush. You already got your money for this direct to DVD movie.
For
and
sure.
that hurt. But like, I'm also interested in the banana splits because it's a cool way of looking at what they were through the lens of 2019 and what would happen if they existed and if it ended. Because, yeah, there's no reason why in 2019 they wouldn't be like, if we have an actor in that suit, we have to pay them union dues. If we buy, like, shitty animatronics, we just need one person on stage to interact with them. Maybe. We need one person to operate all 4 of them. And let me tell you, a Teamster's wage operating those robots is a lot less than 4 actors who are in suits.
Right.
Because it's 2019. Like, everything about it makes sense in terms of what I know about the entertainment industry. And it's something that I do care about. And I did know that it was Fleegle, but I don't want to see another thing from my childhood that I cared about just used to get my money, and then it becomes almost an inconsequential part of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the whole the money aspect of it too, because in a lot of ways this is not a movie made to make money. It's a movie to lay groundwork for future money making. And what I mean by that is, like, if this movie hits, then that means that they get to sell mugs, they get to sell T-shirts, they get to, Hot Topic, they get to sell bloody banana splits, like toys and stuff like that. And that actually, weirdly, going back to my feelings on the Flintstone and how on a meta sense all of that stuff works together, in a meta sense that kind of does work for the banana splits. That idea of them becoming a merchandising thing that will exist even beyond this movie. If they never make another banana splits movie, if this one is enough to get people talking and buying that stuff again, then they've done their job. They cheaply made a film that became marketing material for them to, for the next 10 years, be able to sell character posters at Walmart, and even if they just make $10 million off of this. They sure as hell didn't spend $10 million to make that movie, so that's going to be a net positive for them, you know? So even you not buying the movie, even you not spending the money yourself there, that might not even bother them so much
No,
because you're
because
still going to
the
watch
ad
it. We're still going to
revenue
talk
for
about it,
people
right?
who are buying on sci-fi, the licensing fees, like it's gonna do well regardless. And again, it is because the target consumer from where I'm sitting is the curious person.
Yeah.
Curiosity sells this film.
Yeah, man, it's weird. It's the first time I think I've seen it so blatant, and maybe that's why it's hitting me so hard. You know, this is the first time I've seen so blatantly seen people just doing what they want for the dollar. You know, and and I need to get to the point where I'm okay with that.
That's a hard bridge to cross. But it's also a bridge that I feel everybody has to cross at some point in their life. I mean, it's so weird. It's so weird that we're having this discussion also like the week after Men in Black International came out and it did not make Men in Black money.
Yeah.
And the question is it because this was never a viable franchise without Will Smith, or is it because like people don't care about Men in Black anymore?
Yeah, well, and we're also saying this, we're recording this the weekend that Toy Story 4 is coming out. And, you know, it hasn't happened yet. I'm hoping that it does its due, but this might be the first Toy Story movie because I know plenty of people that know it's coming out and they're not down on the movie, but they're not necessarily itching to run out this weekend to go see it. And as we've mentioned before in the past, like that first weekend revenue is really kind of the thing that makes or breaks a film in today's industry. And so if people aren't rushing out the door to go see that movie this week, you know, like, and it'll do fine. It's going to be a kids movie. It's a Toy Story movie. It's Pixar. They never fall on their face. But is it going to be like Toy Story money, right? Is it going to be that thing that like it deserves to be? I don't know, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, I mean Shaft, new movie, and it hit sixth place. It was sixth place in the weekend box office that first weekend that it came out. But then everywhere that I was going showed it like trending the highest in terms of films that people were interested in seeing.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that doesn't jive. That doesn't make sense. Is it because like people were going to see Men in Black and then they're like, oh, I'll see Shaft when I can? And then but they don't care about that. They only care that it's opening weekend it wasn't number one.
Right.
It's a weird industry, and it's weird to look at the financials of it. And it's so weird that I'd rather end the episode than continue talking about it.
Yeah, well, and then allow me to just put one final point on this is
Yeah.
like I want to I like to bring it back around to what I was saying earlier is I'm okay with people doing this sort of stuff and even if they're not doing it quote unquote for the money but they are doing it for no real reason at the end of the day then the only reason you're really doing it is to survive the next day and buy groceries, right? Like at some point it comes down to the money and that's okay. Like that's the part that I need to come to terms with is like the fact that I totally support people out there that just want to just try something. And as long as it doesn't kill anybody in the process, like that's cool. Like and that is what I firmly believe. And I have always felt that, you know, about crappy video games and silly movies and even shitty music. Like sure, I'll listen to your crappy demo tape. Like why the hell not? Like, you know, who knows? Maybe you'll get your shit together and in 10 years, you know, we'll be able to talk about how you grew from this, you know, and that's what I mean is maybe after this movie comes out, maybe we'll be able to look back on it fondly and talk about the things that came from it or, you know, whatever surprises it has in it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And also, all I'm thinking is while you're saying that is those little slides that come up at the end of movies now that like 14,000 jobs were provided by the film you just watched.
Right.
Even though it's not a theatrical film, it is providing jobs to people who work in that industry. So even just like the guy who shows up to plug in the lights, like it's important to him.
Hmm. Yeah, this movie is important to somebody, and it will be important to people when it comes out, and that people could very well be us. We just, it's it's such a weird space to be in, to see this thing and to have the feelings that I'm feeling, because they are so conflicting about a stupid banana splits movie.
Gotta tell you though, it's also piqued my interest in the banana splits. Like, in that weird way that, like, you know, copy pastas or creepy pastas get people talking about things from the past. This is one that we know exists.
Right.
Like, the banana splits is a real thing. So when people go to Google and type in banana splits, they're going to get interesting things. Like, in a weird way,
Yeah.
it's marketed towards the internet.
Yeah, yeah. You see, now you've got me wishing though that it was much more of a Candle Cove style creepypasta, where it was this thing where it is a slow burn and this realization that they've been this all along. And so like there's this weird meta reality of like, have they have they always been this way even before this movie was made? Like, what if this whole thing was like a found footage, like, oh no, we discovered that this entire time the Banana Splits have been murdering people. Like, there'd be a weird like, now I have to look back on my history with them and question everything. This doesn't do that. This makes this makes me think this is something very silly and separate from what I have. And like I I almost wonder if it would be more acceptable to me if it were the other way. I don't know. I don't know.
I know that it would be because of a little film called Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, where she's basically the banana splits, but a buxom lady who introduces horror movies. And then that movie takes her and puts her into an actual scary horror comedy setting. And you love that movie. You can't deny it.
No, I do. Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
So I don't know. There's weird precedent for something like this working, and it's piqued my interest in the worst ways possible.
Yeah.
So if you would like to calm Sejohn down regarding the Banana Splits film, you can find him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you want to talk to Devon more about Bingo, Fleegle, Snorky, and Drooper, you go ahead and hit him up at Devon Decker. At Devon D. Decker?
At Devon D. Decker, yes.
Yeah.
It's okay. You had those other names correct. It's all right that you got mine wrong. You say it all the time. You only say those once in a blue moon. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember Jeremy, Eris dies, and Will.i.am take us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.